Thank you everyone for coming to the second Qual Lab Lunch Talk of the semester, where we will be discussing the qualitative data analysis software Transana. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple housekeeping issues before we get started. First and foremost, all attendees, if you could, please have your microphones off and your videos turned on. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or share them in the question and answer section on your computer. Also, this session is being recorded and the video and transcript will be available on the Qual Lab webpage for a few days after the event. Also, for closed captioning and future events, please get in contact with the Qual Lab in 7 to 10 days. And to learn about other events offered by the College of Education and Human Ecology, please go to ehe.osu.edu/events or visit the Qual Lab at u.osu.edu/Qual Lab.
We're so glad you're here. Thank you so much. And for our agenda for today with the Qual Lab, Bakari and I are introducing you and welcoming you to this space. Also, Dr. Moore will do an introduction of our guest speaker. Our speaker will talk and introduce you to Transana for a bit, which I'm really excited about because this is now in the Ramsire Computer Lab, available for free, at least the basic version, for all faculty, staff, postdocs, grad students. And so if you want to use this after for your own research, that's how you can log on and get to that space. We'll have plenty of time for question and answer, wrap up, and of course, ask questions. It's a small group, so you'll have plenty of time to ask questions. For our next Qual Lab lunches, on the next slide, we have, Bakari, to the next slide. We have coming up a conversation about intersectionality and critical perspectives by two T&L faculty at Cleveland State, and they'll be coming in and talking about that next time, which I'm very excited about. And then our own faculty member talking about phenomenology. There's an interest across departments in phenomenology, but yet we don't have many classes on phenomenology. So she has agreed to come and speak here. So I'm really excited about that. I hope to see you there. Bakari will move to the next slide, and I'm going to switch it to Dr. Moore.
Great, thank you, Dr. Raspberry. I asked for the privilege to introduce Brian because I had the pleasure of being his doctoral advisor, dissertation advisor. So Brian, I was just telling Penny and Bakari that I recruited Brian as my GA on a National Science Foundation project looking at informal science learning for preschool dual language learners here in Central Ohio. And I told them out front, like, look, it's great you speak French and Arabic and all these other languages. I really wanted Spanish, but we'll make it work. And Brian's linguistic repertoire was more than, it was a huge chunk. It covered a huge chunk of linguistic area that we needed for the project. But more importantly, Brian became took a key role in managing data, in training the team for data analysis. And so when I was asked to do this workshop on Transana, I said, Brian Seilstad is much more adept and nimble in the Transana space. I use it, I still use it. I use Pro now, I used multi-user before. And I know he did very good work with my team, teaching them how to use the much clunkier Transana multi-user. So let me tell you about Brian in terms of where he is now. He's the Director of Internationalization and Partnerships at Al Akhawayn University in Ifrane, Morocco. He actually came to OSU from there, and he said when he came, I want to go back, and he did go back. He did have a stint as a Dean of Global Engagement at the American College of Casablanca, and before that, he was the Associate Director of the Office of International Programs and an Assistant Professor in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the institution where he is now. His work centers on bi and multilingualism, migration, and equity. And I have his book picture pulled up. I have his book at my office. But his book is Educating Adolescent Newcomers in the Super Diverse Midwest, Multilingual Students in English-Centric Contexts. And it's based on his dissertation, and I can recommend it highly. So anyway, I'll drop the link to the webpage for the book into the chat. And Brian, I'm going to hand it off to you now because we want time for you to share your wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's really generous introduction. I really am glad to be here and to have this chance to talk about qualitative research in general and kind of my journey into this space. So I'll do my best to share the little bit I know about Transana, and then just how I felt like it helped, just as contributes to qualitative research in general. So I hope you can see my screen now. I did put together a little presentation, and mainly I'm going to spend more time actually looking at some of the Transana work, and hopefully that will be more practical for everybody. And so can everybody see my screen here with the thing?
Yes.
Okay. I tried to pick the PowerPoint slide that most reflected OSU colors. Probably don't have quite the right palette. I thought about using Akhawayn, but we'll stick with OSU, right? So I'll just say, for me, when I came to Ohio State, I was lucky enough to get accepted for one thing, and then when I came to OSU, I would say I was a pretty open-minded student. I've always been kind of a decent student, and I didn't exactly know what it would be like at OSU, but as we started going, it became very clear early on that the kind of training that we were getting, at least in TNL, and certainly what I was getting with Leslie wasn't in the first year, but in the first, the first classes that you take at OSU are very qualitative in nature. I mean, you're asked to do a pilot project in 8,003 or whatever, and it's pretty clear that you're going to be going that route, and you're not going to be trained necessarily to do big surveys and things like that. Not that that's bad, but it just didn't seem to be the push within the department and the people that I was interacting with, people like Dr. Gallo, and then of course Dr. Moore later, and then I took Dr. Bloom's discourse analysis class for the whole year, and all of those things are very qualitative in nature and very much focused on spending time in context, videotaping and recording real events in educational spaces. So when I started doing the field work, even in 8003, looking at, like I was doing a little bit thing with the FEEP program, and just little by little, it became more and more apparent that, okay, if I'm going to make it in this program, I'm going to need a camera, and I'm going to need to be in context, and I'm going to be recording. I'm sure that there are people who do different things, but that became very apparent to me, and I had nothing wrong with it. It seemed like lots of fun. Let's get cameras and let's get microphones and see what we can do in context. So in terms of my own emerging methodology, it was fun to just be part of that, and in Dr. Moore's in Leslie's project in ASIL, that was pretty complicated. We would be in the room at let's say the preschool sites, and we would have 3 cameras going and multiple microphones, and then the analysis of that was very clear that we'd have to have something to help. That's why we got into Transana. And then my own other ones, I did a different project that was just one camera with what I call the CVIS project. It was citizenship education with Bhutanese, Nepali elders. And then my own dissertation was the Talent project. That was teaching and learning in multilingual environments, where basically I had one camera going in the classroom plus one handheld microphone that I would go around with. And so my own dissertation compiled a lot of data. I'm reasonably proud of this. I have about 140 hours of classroom video, 28 formal, semi-formal recorded interviews, a lot of pictures, handouts, and so on. So the main question I was having in that dissertation was, to what degree did the school I was working in support the students' language cultural backgrounds? But of course, a lot of things were going on around it, but that was the key question. And it was really clear to me early on, as I was going, I think probably a lot of people at OSU, or just anybody, you start to think, well, can I do this on the cheap? Can I organize this stuff with, I don't know, Excel, or can I use whatever? I remember Leslie, when we first started, was using Deduce as her program, and we worked with that for a little bit. Other people I knew were working with InVivo or Atlas TI. I had a little bit of experience. I worked as a winter GA on Dr. Newell's project, where we used InVivo, and that was more on textual data. I never got to try Atlas TI, but I was looking around for for programs, and Transana was there because Dr. Bloom uses that. I'm quite confident that's what his main program was, and then C Beta, that's what they use. So in the when I was looking at the professional version, the basic version is good, but it only allows you to do like one video and it kind of maxes out pretty quickly. But to get the pro version, it's good. The cost is pretty reasonable, it's like $300. It's got a lot of power and versatility. You can have up to you can do simultaneous videos, like 3 videos at the same time, I think, plus the audio files. You can have up to 4 transcripts for each record. And you can do everything. You can do text analysis, video, audio, and still images. So it was good. The only con is kind of the learning curve. It took me quite a while just to come around to the idea that I should use it because it wasn't super easy. The technical challenges, even after I committed to it, was getting it set up and then doing things like once I finished getting the video from the field site, was getting it combined in the right way. And then there was a point at which the video was very large in size, several gigabytes for each file, and it was making Transana go slowly. So I had to do a different thing to make the videos go down in size. There's a lot of just sort of background thing I would call it in that context of like cleaning your data for quantitative people, but this is more like getting the videos and everything to work properly with the system. Managing the file names was kind of a big thing. I had to make sure I had a good system to make sure the date and time and where I was going would work. And then the inside Transana, you have to do some things to synchronize the audio. And I had the unfortunate thing where I purchased some very inexpensive USB microphones, and they had the problem that at certain points it would be going fine, and then it would be like it would have this thing. So my deep tip to everybody out there is invest in a good microphone if you're going to do any synchronization kind of things, and just in general. I know that that's one of those beginner tips that we're all told in the qualitatives, like buy a good microphone, buy a good camera. Well, I ignored it when it came to the microphone, and a little bit to my detriment. It didn't hurt a lot, but it hurt a little bit. So when it comes to using Transana, I'm going to switch over now to just looking at it from the inside. Okay, so this is, oops, sorry, let's get this out of the way. Okay, so let me make this smaller so you're not seeing this up. Okay, so Transana is built on libraries, and it has 3 main levels. I hope you can see this well over here. There are libraries, collections, and keywords. Okay, and the main place to start is the library. That's where you're putting in your raw data, let's say, your field notes, your audio files, or your video files. And for field notes, you can do things fairly easy. You can upload from Word or whatever. You can even do a batch upload to make it a little bit easier. And so I have all my field notes in here. This is my dissertation data, but you can see there's a lot of field notes here. The interviews are there as well. So you put these in, and the names that you give is there. And then underneath the video is where you can start to make your transcripts. And I'll start to show how to make transcripts in a second. The interviews and dealing with, let's just say, a basic interview transcript is fairly straightforward. I'll talk about how that works over here. But the main thing is the video analysis. So underneath here, you can put in your video, and then underneath it, you can make, again, multiple transcripts of events. So for me, in my own study, I had sort of 2 things. I had the camera, you can see here, the file in the upper left has the video image, and you could have up to, I think, 3 videos going on at the same time. So here's the main video. I used a GoPro camera, and I had a wide angle lens, so I put it in the room at different places, and sometimes I would pick it up and walk around with it, but mainly it was there to kind of capture the whole class events. And this blank space over here is the audio file that was from my little handheld microphone. And I would walk around the room doing participant observation and talk to students and so on. So to get more insight about what's going on. And again, sometimes I picked up the camera and moved it around, but a lot of times I just left it and then was relying on my talks with the students. So what does that look like in terms of a transcript? Down here is where you are building your transcripts up. This area here is some visualization that I don't think is super helpful. It's kind of interesting, but it's not super helpful. It's kind of helpful for synchronizing the audio and video, but not that helpful. But the main part that we're all interested in is how do we get transcripts in here? So I made 2 transcripts for every video, and I would be sort of transcribing at the same time, where this one here was what I called, let me just see if I can pull it over so we can see it. I called it the video index, where I was kind of keeping a bird's eye view of what's going on in the class. So you've got here the different just main events going on. And then I kept a second transcript, which was what I called focus conversations. And that was the audio file, but a little bit of that when I was walking around the room and actually talking to students. So you can see here a transcript. And what's really nice about it is these little dots is where you make time code signatures. So with various keystrokes, as you're typing along, you put these in and you can push this button. I hope it won't take too long to open up the time code value. Sometimes it does, but you will show that. And so when you're, a lot of times if you're doing a transcript like in Excel or something, you have to put in the times, but this is really convenient. It puts the time codes in automatically and tells you where things are at. And then you can jump to the different moments and type more or less just like a word processor after you do that. And then the editing button is here, but I'm not going to turn that on because I don't want to mess around with my transcript. But basically you can see how once you get things transcribed, you've got the time code thing. And it's pretty tight in some places. Every few seconds, I'm making a time code, and that's a good way just to organize the events. When I talk like about message units or things like that, and having those put in there works really well. And you can imagine, this took a long time. I probably, you can see over here all of the different videos that I had over the year. It's many, many different videos, and it took a long time to get all of this transcribed. Mostly 8-9 months after the data collection. At a certain point, and probably everybody kind of realizes, I said to myself, all right, I need to stop the analysis and just focus in on the writing so I can get this PhD someday, because otherwise I'll never be done with the analysis. And I continue to go back to this and analyze things for publications and so on. But once you have that, maybe I'll pause right now really quickly. Are there any quick questions about putting raw data and making transcripts in Transana? Go ahead. Can
you say again, just the transcript on the top is the one where you were walking around, and the earlier transcript on the bottom was what was happening overall in the
Yes.
room where you were, okay. And then now that you put the timestamp to it, you actually had to go in and plug in the timestamp in Transana?
As you're transcribing, you're putting the time signatures in. Yeah,
okay.
You're typing your thing, and then it's the good thing about Transana, like a lot of transcribing softwares, because that's one of the main things it is you can very easily stop, go back. There's easy keystrokes for go back 10 seconds, go back 2 seconds. You can also put in custom keystrokes to do that. So I would be typing and going back, but there's also an easy keystroke for insert a time code. So you're typing along, next line, quick, and you get pretty adept at that as you're going along. So if I'm looking at just an interview transcript, I might have the text and then 5-second intervals, but it's whatever you put in. That's why it's not like every 5 seconds or every 10 seconds. It's whatever in some places I have, a timestamp every second, just because there's a lot of stuff happening. The kid stands up, the teacher says, sit down, and it's just these quick little things that try to mark it off, because the creating of those timestamps is very key for creating the collections, which will be the next thing I talk about. And because that's where the analysis starts. But the transcript is partly analysis, obviously, but the next part of more the organizing of things. So are there any questions about making transcripts in Transana? Any other ones? All right. Good. All right. So I'll say at this point, this takes a long time. It took a long time just to get everything in here, set up properly. Some of the interviews are a little bit easier to transcribe. I just showed the video because that's probably what a lot of people are interested in. How do I actually analyze a video? And obviously people could do a lot of things. You can have up to 4 transcripts. And as I've seen more, I know that people have done really interesting things with Transana, like one transcript is just focused on gesture or prosaic or prosody kind of things. And one is the things that actually people say. And you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, really the sky's the limit with that number of transcripts. And then you can just take it as far as you want, honestly. The next thing though, that is where it really starts to get really interesting is the collection. So once you have your transcripts, what I would do after I wrote my transcript, it would take me sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours to take this hour and a half long classroom video and get it to the point that I've got what I have here. The general index of all the stuff that happened, the focused conversations, the stuff that felt like it was important during the time. But then after that, the point is to try to get all that stuff organized. So I would go, so that's where collections come in. Collections are kind of your way of adding meaning to it, I guess you could say. So I would do, after every time you go in your transcript and you leave it like that and you start to highlight whatever sections of your transcript. And then you click on it and you're able, after you do that, to say, you like, whoops, sorry, stop, sorry. Okay, I didn't want, okay, so once you get in there and you start highlighting your transcripts, then you can start making collections and you just click on various things here to add them. And what ends up doing that is, this is your analysis stuff coming in. So what I would start doing after every one, and just have a broad structure of classroom activities. I would go over the video index and have things like, classroom warm up, or, here's some, the school's announcements, or what's going on in each one of the teachers' classes, or taking attendance, students moving around, teachers explaining certain things, getting things like that. And I would start to organize that at that level. And then the parts that were maybe the most interesting for me were really looking for those moments where teachers were engaging, like in what I called eventually bilingual supporting moves or curtailing moves, where the teachers were, trying to bring out the students' linguocultural repertoire in some way, or engaging with the students by using their home language or whatever, or in other places telling students, don't use your home language or stuff like that. So these two areas became very important for me over time, but there were a lot of other things that were interesting that I have categorized. So like aha moments, there were just like a lot of moments where a student was talking to me or the teacher, and the student would go, like I get it, So this isn't actually an area that I haven't written up yet, but I mean, it was kind of nice. I have a lot of these moments where, and it often had to do with like when the teacher would connect to their home language or home language culture. But I could organize any of these, but these were just one of the places that I thought was interesting. And there's a lot of other stuff here. What were students talking? Anytime we were talking about what they did out of school, handouts. But this is really where you start to get things organized in ways that are relevant to your research question or to focal areas. Some of it becomes useful, some of it may just be there for a while. Like I've just nice moments where teachers, and some of these like you might have them, you might leave them, but it becomes helpful because once you've done that, you have this deeper organization of your data. And from that, you can do things like run reports. So I have a report here that was really helpful. Let me see if I pull it up here quickly. Oh no, it got like my thing closed. So you can click on here and then you can make a collection report, and it will take all of the things. Hopefully this won't take too long to produce. It will take all of the things that you have in that collection and make a report of it for you to go back to. And it makes it really helpful. I mean, this is a part where it made it very helpful for me at the end of when I was trying to, warrant some of my conclusions. I could go here and say, I could count up these moments and say there were, 92 documented supporting moments, or there were 90 or 37, whatever. And I know that that may not be that meaningful to some people, but I think it's something that was helpful for me to make kind of a warranted conclusion about what I was trying to argue, that the school was supportive of students' language cultural backgrounds broadly, but still had some things that could be improved. So something like these reports was just a nice, fun and very useful way to document that. So as this is kind of assembling, are there any questions about Transana and collections? Hopefully it's going to come on, you can see it. I kind of love this part when it generates, if it does. Yeah, okay. So you can see that Transana, the collection report, is very, very nice. It takes all of that stuff and it just brings it into one report, and you can see all the stuff that you included in there and go down, and whatever you put into there, it comes out. And this is really nice. You can turn this into a PDF if you want. This is the kind of thing that you could take and print it out, cut it up, but make it even more useful. And you can kind of even go along and count it. There's even a place where you can get a sort of a summary report, how many items are in the collection, and so on. But it ends up being pretty helpful, just to kind of step back from the whole thing. So that's what a collection is. And are there any questions about collections? I think everybody's good. But if not, the last thing to talk about is keywords. And these are a little bit like collections. And to be really honest, I don't know if I really unlocked this 100% in my own thing, but you get these keywords when you make a collection. You can assign a keyword to it, and then that can also be turned into a number of ways to analyze the data. And I feel like I didn't quite unlock this all the way, but this is also a very useful thing. And I've got lots of keywords here that have been that came up during the time, and could go back to from home language to talk about race and other types of events that happened. So that's what the collections and keywords, again, are really where the analysis kind of comes out, and you have a chance to put together more kind of complicated, I guess, ways of looking at the data. And let me see, I think that I have a couple other slides. Are there any, if there's any questions? Yeah, okay, I did that generating reports. Yep, okay, I went over that. Yep, and yeah, there's just lots of ways to get it. So I guess in the end, what emerged for me anyway was that, after having all this data, it felt to be that I had a pretty well documented and organized data set. It was pretty easy to go back now and retrieve things for conferences or publications. You can always make it better and continue to add to your transcripts and add other transcripts and so on. And the main thing for me, and that was the best thing I realized by the end when I went after, because again, I was analyzing until, because I finished the field work in May, and then I was analyzing all from there until February or January. But when it came time to write the dissertation and really just get into it, I found it was very easy to go and warrant my conclusions and put together, I think, a fairly convincing set of information to explain what I thought was happening in the site, in the research. So that's Transana from my perspective. Are there questions? I'll stop sharing my screen.
So yeah, a question I would have is, do you feel that Transana is easier to work with and navigate in terms of collecting the data, analyzing the data than other software programs such as NVivo?
You know, I haven't had deep experience with NVivo. I know it's good. I think if I understand, NVivo has a little bit of some limitations with how many video sources it can use. And this is kind of the thing, like, I don't know, once I feel like, since I committed to Transana, I know it pretty well. I don't know exactly how well the other ones. I have had, you know, from talking to like, well, one of my friends, Jackie Ridley, who was also one of us as advisors, she used Atlas TI, and I know she really liked it. Jackie would give me a hard time about convincing that I convinced Leslie to use Transana, how much she hated Transana. I don't know. It's hard. I can't say which is better or not.
She was using the multi-user. That's so
Yeah.
anybody who used Transana multi-user is probably going to not be happy about it. So,
Yeah.
but the one on your own computer is a different game entirely. But yeah, the team did resent that. They got the spinning wheel of death a lot. So that was not good.
Yeah. Yeah, there was, the multi-user is theoretically interesting. I think we had a lot of challenges with, like, we're using the OSU server and
that was rough.
I think I heard that Atlas TI is a lot better for that kind of collaboration.
So they have cloud-based too?
That's what I understand.
Okay.
I think that what I understand, I was going to mention this about Transana. You know, one of the questions probably a lot of people have in mind is, does it do anything for you? Does it help you like transcribe? It doesn't really. I think that some of the newer versions, maybe Leslie, you can speak to this. I understand some of the newer versions have a little bit of automatic transcription capacity. Is that true or not?
I haven't tried that. I do have the newest version that works on Catalina. So I have an older MacBook Pro with the version before, and I just got the newer version. I have not explored that. I don't know if any of y'all have done, looked into getting transcribed. We did some things where we had the interviews transcribed by professionals. We paid for the transcription. Depending on what you do with transcribed talk, I think it depends, paying for a first pass can be great, especially for interviews, if you're not worried about micro stuff, you just want the content essentially. If you come from a tradition where you're really paying attention to the small details, I'm a fan of starting from scratch because it's a way of getting into the data, but that may be a matter of doctrine as much as anything. But I haven't tried that, Brian. That's a good question.
Yeah. And I did a little bit of that both. I went in my own, because I have some just regular interviews. And so, I would have some of those transcribed, but then I think I went back over them and did the time codes myself in Transana. But that was one thing I wanted to mention. I think there might be some new features that can do things for you, but as we all know, none of that is perfect.
I also have, sorry about the connectivity issues, but for Zoom, Carmen Zoom, I know we're doing a lot of videos and interviews and focus groups via Zoom these days. And if you record to the iCloud instead of to your computer, it will do the first round of the AI transcript for you. But like Leslie, I think it's really important to go through, make sure it's accurate, because it really is not always accurate. And so as a researcher, then you would go from there. But the iCloud has really saved, I know, a lot of our students' time.
Yeah. And that's if you have that option, and again, if it's that you're going for content as opposed to form, right? Depending on how you use talk data, it getting somebody else to something or somebody else to do that first pass saves you tons of time. But you got to check, because I can tell you the Zoom transcription can get really crazy, like really crazy. So definitely check it.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
If I wanted to give one additional plug for Transana, is it does have good customer support. The guy, David Wood, he seems like a real one-man show. I mean, you write a thing to help at Transana, and he personally, unless he's got some team of people using his email, writes you back right away and is very, very helpful and solves a lot of issues for me, and I think for us on the ASIL team with the multi-user. And was super nice.
Yeah, and even for stuff like when I got my update, there was an issue that my newest version of Transana I purchased recently was purchased in somebody else's name. And so when I tried to get the update for free, it didn't happen automatically. And with David being my interface, it was like that got sorted out really quickly. Whereas if you're dealing with a company, like a, you know, big corporation, you know, that would have taken like a month to get resolved, right? And so there is a nice, there's definitely a sense of community around Transana. And if you go to the regular training workshops, like you run into some of the same people. One of the things I wanted to comment just about software, data management and analysis software, just as a you know, if you're writing up stuff, a grant proposal or a manuscript, never start a paragraph with, I analyze my data using Transana, Atlas TI, never ever do that, okay? Because your readers will be like, the software doesn't do the analysis, right? You will tell them at some point what software you're using, but you tell them the kind of analysis you're doing first, and then kind of bury the software. That's just a tip in terms of how to put this stuff out there when you're disseminating or seeking grant funding. Penny, do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely, I do. So you are the researcher, you're doing the analysis. This is a tool for analysis, to use the words of Dr. Leslie Rex, who was a discourse analysis person who trained me up. And it's the tool you use to do the analysis. So that's very important. You, the researcher, do the steps and, you know, code it and all this that Brian just shared with us. So good point.
Yeah, and in addition to the community that Leslie mentioned, I mean, there are David's like the website for Transana, and he has like all the time, you know, introduction to Transana webinars on for free. I was even going to share one. I know I think it's literally like every month, every week, he's having introduction to Transana, how to get things going. And that was really helpful for me to get going with it, because it is not, it took me a while. Like it's not something where you just sort of like put in this stuff and start. You have to, it definitely needs to be built up. You know, you have to get the data in, you have to, you know, kind of know how to do the transcript. You have to kind of go I felt like I really had to go step by step to understand how this is going to work. Because that's the way it works.
You know, that's a good point, Brian. I know with any software that you would use, whether with In Vivo and the research team I'm working with on that, or Deduce, MaxQda, it really is important for you to keep a list of what you do, your steps for your research team or for yourself. And it's a little bit different than your audit trail. Your audit trail making decisions that you are, I'm choosing hermeneutic phenomenology instead of existential phenomenology. So you have different steps, but for our team, we actually had, how do you get into Transana? What do you push on? What do you code? And then we come together, decide on certain codes, then go back to it and create these kind of worksheets for ourselves to actually walk through the software, how to do it, what we had agreed on, our coding sheets and all that. So I appreciate your sharing that, Brian, about how really the data management is a part of any research project, whether you have it on different sticky notes all over your living room, or you're using a software package, or you're using something like Excel or Word. But some of these software packages really can do far more than if you throw it in Word or Excel. I think it just depends on what your goals are as a researcher and what you need. So with the videos, this is the main one that really helps with video analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have you know, played around with more other projects, you know, where I'm using like several cameras at once and so on, and it's been good. I mean, the only sometimes is getting the videos to the right size and some of that background stuff, but it's very it's I wasn't going to say it's not user friendly, but it's it's very powerful and lets you do a lot of things pretty much as far as your kind of imagination and methods can take you.
Caleb, Gwendolyn, do you have questions about how you might use this with a research project that you're working on, or any thoughts that you want to share or ask? I think it's kind of nice when we have a small group and we can focus in on you or what your needs are. So I would just want to give you the opportunity to ask anything that you'd like. And if not, that's fine. I don't want to pressure you at all. Just want to make sure we can pay attention to you and your research.
Caleb, you're muted.
Not yet, Caleb.
What about now?
Yes.
Yes, you're good now, Caleb.
Okay. Penny, I don't know if you said my name or not. It was kind of cutting in and out. I just want to say I appreciate the fact that this is here and you guys open it up to others to come and listen in. I'm just a first-year PhD student, kind of getting my my footing here, so that's why I wanted to drop in and just kind of learn as much as I can right now. So.
Not just, hey, you're a
yeah, just-
researcher. Here you go. Yeah. I'm glad
I'm trying.
you're here.
We'll see.
Yeah. So,
And so Caleb, what college are you in? And what program are you in as well?
I'm in workforce development.
Okay.
Okay.
So a little bit of my background, I was an administrator for 5 years. I taught for 9 years in high school. And so obviously workforce development, that's my angle, trying to make sure that schools are as prepared as they can be. Well, students are as prepared as they can be, but a lot of that has to come through teacher instruction and their background and knowledge. So that's my personal angle, but obviously, you know, the qualitative analysis is going to be a huge piece of that. So I know the system side, I know the administrative side, but the research side, I'm trying to learn.
Right, you're probably familiar with the evaluation side, and that's different than the research side, although close kin, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I'm from Illinois, so we use a lot of Charlotte Danielson, and there's a lot of, you know, you talk about timestamps and all that, like it is very rigorous when it comes to that piece of it. So it's not unfamiliar territory, but it's just, like I said, learning from experts like you guys to, all right, tips of the tricks of the trade, and how do I bring all of this stuff together in a more larger and more formal construct, aside from evaluation.
One of the, as I was discerning like what PhD project to do, I was thinking for a while about doing what I call the workplace language project, because I was working with refugees in Columbus who would often go off to work sites around central Ohio where, you know, they're working in factories or other things like that. Something kind of like what was, you know, would be considered like low skill work, you know, but you know, the idea that I had was to be doing similar methods, you know, being in the site, you know, videotaping the different events going on, because a lot of the sites had like, let's say they had a lot of Bhutanese Nepali working there, then they'd had picked one or two like Bhutanese Nepali who kind of like was, you know, had learned English well now, and then they were promoted to like a supervisor. And then I was interested in how those like supervisors who come from a specific like language cultural community were working to kind of like socialize the other people from their same, you know, community to do the job well enough to be successful and, you know, make money, not get fired, and those kind of things that are important in these countries. And I was doing that, and we did a few sort of test runs with that, and then eventually moved away to my own project. But I think it's still really interesting to think about work sites and how they're, you know, the actual practices at a job are going on, and the kind of research that we're doing that you know, you can do with a video camera and other things could be interesting there in parallel to other types of evaluation or whatever.
One comment about choosing your software. Penny and I were chatting just before things started, and to a great extent, these qualitative software systems operate all in the same way. They're just different versions of the same kind of thing with different names for collections and libraries and all that. And so having the chance to try out software in the labs here before you make any investments is great, because something you will find more comfortable probably. It'll, something about the visuals of it or whatever, how often you've got to click to do whatever. The other thing to consider, and not like too much, but every field and subfield has its practices. And if it's one thing, if it's otherwise equal to choosing between systems, choosing the system that's more familiar to your field is probably the way to go, just because you don't have to explain the software to them. Transana for me is a nice choice because in linguistic anthropology and applied linguistics, it's been very widely used. So if you say I use Transana, people are like, oh, right. So there's just an advantage to that. I don't know. There's another system called Elan, which came out of the Max Planck Institute of Psycholinguistics, which is free, but it's really for much more. It was developed by that institute for specific research purposes. So it's very, very micro. So if you're in, it's much more limited in its scope. I think Brian's comment about Transana being quite flexible, and you can use it for very different kinds of things. Same can be said of LSTI, same can be said of deduce, and thinking about what your needs are very specifically. And I think, Caleb, you're bringing it up, and probably everyone's thinking about this. You may not be that clear on what your needs are yet. And so that's, again, why using stuff in the lab is great, because, again, you don't want to make big investments until you know. I have the fortune of having funds that I can make purchases that end up not being great purchases, but as grad students, you probably don't. So avail yourself of the free stuff and before you start laying down the cash.
Yeah, and what I told I just had a conversation about a week or so ago with my advisor about that. I've spent the last decade trying to integrate so many different facets and variables from and whatnot from within the community, within the school district, to try and do what I can from an administrator side to improve education, improve that output. And then now it's the mental shift for me is just isolating one piece of it so I can really narrow in and focus on that. So once I get that piece down, then this would be my next step, is looking at the technology that I need to utilize, to dig in a little bit further. So, right, like I said, I'm trying to explore as much as I can and get familiar with the little bits and pieces, so that way when I'm ready, I'm there. So.
Great. There's a video about in vivo from Dr. Rhodesia McMillian, one of the ed policy faculty in ed studies from last year. She might be doing a Qual Lab lunch next month, next semester, but then you can see, what are just in an hour, what does it look like? What can it do? Will it focus on my research question? Leslie, you're rattling off. So I just want to make sure people know these softwares, and also on the Qual Lab website, we have links to many of them, but there's Deduce, MaxQda. You mentioned a free software that I don't think I'm familiar with. Could you say that again?
Yeah, Elan. I'm putting it Max Planck Institute. Yeah. If you search it, it's an in-house thing, and they've developed multiple versions, and things have been clunky at times. It's pretty amazing. So, I considered a job out there, and they took me into their lab, and I was like, this is so cool. And I got kind of into it for a while, and then I realized this is very, very specific to really looking at eye gaze, gesture, and talk. And if that's your thing, that is your software. I'll be telling you that's the way to go.
Yeah,
and
I played a bit with Elan, and it's very intense.
Intense.
But I stuck. I stuck with Transana for. I think there's a certain part of it too. Is once you choose something, you just kind of go.
Well, yeah.
Just sort of forced to go with it. But the Elan was interesting. I liked.
When Brian mentioned the prosody and that kind of stuff, the simultaneity, different semiotic gestures and all that stuff, Elan is more powerful than any of the other qualitative video type of even more than studio code, I would say. Actually, a lot more.
You might not know this, but I have a master's of science in interpersonal communication and nonverbal communication was my thesis. So, you know, all the eye gazes and the nods and, you know, all that was just really important. So super powerful. We'll make sure to, Bakari will add this to our Qual Lab dashboard so people can find it if that's of interest. So super
yeah, and if you decide you want somebody to do a demo for Ilan, I could probably help hook you up. I mean, just yeah.
Might be interesting for me, but I don't know about all this.
Yeah. It's intense.
So
It's
I
intense.
will listen.
Ilan had a really bad reputation for a while, actually, but they've worked out a lot of their issues.
Yes, the politics of academia. So that.
Well, no, I mean, it just was. It was buggy. It was chronically buggy, and they worked that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But yes, there's
what
always
else?
politics.
Yes, right. What else? Are there other questions for our guests?
And I do want to say, guys, fear not the low tech ways in especially in the beginning of a project, or you know, in the beginning of your development as a researcher, putting stuff on paper and like doing pile sorts, like, you know, it works. It's not as elegant and quick, and you can't generate the same kinds of visualizations and all of that. But one of the things that Transana can do, I'm sure others can do, that's very cool, is you can do things like you can create visualizations of when certain things happened in an interaction. So for example, I was doing work on adult perceptions of Black children's narrative language. And one of the findings was that basically, even though we were trying to get people to talk about race and language, they really didn't want to talk about race. Okay, big surprise, right? But what was very interesting is you could create these visualizations in Transana of how many minutes in to the interview could you finally get an interviewee to say something that linked race to language. And so that there's just some interesting ways to make your point in ways other than, you know, linear sentences and tables. And every qualitative research data analysis software should have those kinds of tools for you, like different ways to visualize. If they don't, they're falling short of what is the norm for the industry these days.
Great point. The students last night in the Intro to Qualitative course that I teach, we looked at Dr. Stevie Johnson. He won an award for the ASH dissertation of the year. And in addition to his dissertation, he dropped a hip hop album with participants, co-conspirators who all collaborated together. So we looked at the lyrics and actually did some basic theming and coding, and really just looked at it with the color codes in Microsoft Word and color coded it and all that. So I'm also very tactile. So I like what you said, Leslie, about putting it in piles and moving it around and making sure that data is movable and works for you, because you're the researcher, you're the one whose decisions matter. And so just be clear when you write it up about what were the decisions.
Oh, we just lost Penny. Yeah.
Dr. passed away. Oh, she's back.
Woo!
Back like she never left.
So sorry. I'll pretend I never left. So sorry. I'm just gonna be quiet now. Hand it to Bakari.
All right. Well, want to just first and foremost thank everyone for coming in and being part of our second Qual Lab Lunch Talk of the semester. Want to make sure that everyone can thank Dr. Brian Seilstad he's actually Zooming in or Skyping in from Morocco, right? So he's in Africa, North Africa. We just want to thank you for once again being a part of our second Qual Lab Lunch Talk. He is a OSU alum from the Ohio State University, and want everyone to make sure that they're able to come out to our next two Qual Lab Lunch Talks of the semester. That, of course, will be Thursday, November 11th. We'll be featuring Dr. Katie Collin Roy of Cleveland State University and Dr. Charlotte Jacobs from the University of Pennsylvania for their talk on intersectionality and critical perspectives, as well as Ohio State's own Dr. Nemo Abdi, where she will be discussing phenomenology and qualitative research. So please make sure that you get involved with the Qual Lab. We have a graduate student board where we focus on qualitative research for graduate students and give them opportunities to present the professional development, and of course, become more competent researchers. So for myself, on behalf of the Qual Lab, I want to thank you all for coming out. See you next time.
Thank you.
So thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
This is
Take
very